So I just left the farm early this morning and I'm on a train heading into New York City, and I feel a strong need today to talk to you guys about rural cosplay.
Rural cosplay, yeah, rural cosplay. All hat and no cattle, I'm a cowboy living in the heart of Seattle. Rural cosplay.
So I saw this YouTube video by a guy called the City Nerd on my train ride down from Vermont, and it really got me thinking.
Self-identified rurality. There exists research on people who live in urbanized areas but still think of themselves as rural people. This is a topic where it's going to be awfully easy to be sarcastic and mean-spirited, and I may not be able to help myself completely. The fact that over 20% of people who live in literal metropolitan areas conceive of themselves as rural, and 80% of people in exurbs that are like wholly dependent on the nearby metro area also see themselves as rural, is very much the identity politics battleground where elections and ideological debates are being won and lost right now. The dirty secret underlying all of this is that cities are engines of creativity and wealth creation, and low-density suburbs and exurbs exist to extract that wealth and use it to support wasteful, inefficient, and environmentally harmful lifestyles.
Now, against most people's better judgment, I feel a strong need to respond to this video, but before I can, I have a jam-packed day of stuff to do here in the city, so please either enjoy or skip past this brief musical montage.
The city is up in the madness, the people is giving the damage. They turn into animal savage. So rhinos and hippos and mammoths. The hero is coming, I'm locked in. You know that I'm winning, I'm top 10. You know that I came from the dog pen. You want it, you get it, you drop dead. The rebel who came from the bottom. My enemies know that I got it. I'm planting my seeds in gardens, then watching them sprout and harvest. The greatest was always in my plans. Battle the kid is white flags. Not on my level where I stand. Got it, I'm shooting a hot hand. Out of the gym, I was locked out. I failed, the kid was a dropout. I changed the game and it's up now. The city, they need me, it's clear now.
He is recording right now. Like that's,
You don't gimbal, bro?
You don't watch the news like McDonald's?
Concrete jungle, wet dream tomato, you know.
Of course, I had such a great time last night that I think I lost my voice, but I have a lot of things I want to say, so we're going to power through it. Now, being a person who has spent most of his life living in cities, but has spent the last 6 years or so living in, and I'm not exactly sure based on the RUCA code, but I'm pretty sure an area that would be actually classified as rural.
Now she's my RUCA.
One of the things that I've noticed the most is just how strong that rural-urban gap is, culturally speaking, and just how even over the last 6 years, that gap seems to be widening. And we see this gap widening and manifesting itself in a wide variety of ways, whether it's like what's your favorite TV show, or what sort of music you listen to, or even which type of store you prefer to do your general shopping at. The vibes these various things give out are relatively culturally consistent, and the audiences and people who support them are also wildly consistent. And when you look at like the results of the latest American political elections, like I was talking to some friends of mine who live here in New York last night, and they were still in disbelief that things even broke that way. But as a person who lives in a very rural area, even a left-leaning rural area like Vermont, I wasn't even remotely surprised. Disheartened maybe, but not surprised. That cultural gap just keeps getting wider and wider. And yeah, this might be a concept that started to take off after the first time George W. Bush was elected back in 2000, but point of views that might have once been miles apart are now on different hemispheres. Oh, it was close. I'm trying to get myself some tea. I feel like I sound like Bob Einstein from Curb Your Enthusiasm and Super Dave fame.
He said, Billy, what the hell are you doing? He said, it's not so funny when it's your mother, is it?
One thing I don't miss about New York is that like everything opens so relatively late. I mean, it's like 7:15 in the morning right now, and I've been up for hours, and I don't know, everything's still closed. Hey there, can I get a large hot tea with lemon?
We don't have any lemon, we have honey.
I'll take that. Thank you. That feels really good, actually. That helps a lot. So watching that City Nerd video really sparked some strong feelings for me. And over the last day or so, I've been trying to unpack why that was, because I don't feel personally attacked in the least bit. But I guess I do see a larger societal problem that we have, is this growing gap between rural folks and city folks. While there might be some city maximalists who might say that most people should just live in cities and that's the most efficient and effective way for people to live and we should just be done with it, I also think I'm a little bit of a realist and a little bit of a romanticist to say that I think a huge part of the founding principles of the United States is that it's a place that strongly blends those two polarities of rural and urban. And this is probably an oversimplification of it, but contrasting the Hamiltonian ideals versus the Jeffersonian ideals, I think that's a big part of what we've been founded on. And even if you look down to our governing infrastructure and government bodies of the Senate and the House of Representatives and the Electoral College versus the popular vote, that principle of balancing forces between the rural and the urban is just really a core part of who we are. And while you could argue it's almost disenfranchisement because the vote of somebody like me in Vermont for senator has significantly more weight than the vote for somebody in California, while that may have some nefarious roots by preserving things like slavery, I actually think there are important things that have made America successful in terms of balancing resources and growth between the rural and urban spaces. And I know I've covered this a lot in recent videos here on this channel when I talk about things like the Back to the Land movement and the Wild Wild West, but I think it actually ends up becoming even bigger when you think about it in the context of the fact that having cities and industrial or information-based industries is a huge part, obviously the biggest part of the American economic engine. I don't think you can truly discount the importance that our natural resources that sit in the rural spaces, and without those natural resources, I don't think we would have the industries and financial strength in our cities that we do today. And so please understand all the things that I'm saying here as words coming from a person who believes that that balance is exceptionally important to who we are as a country. And yes, that cultural gap between those two spaces is widening, but that cultural gap has always been there. I don't know, probably even going back even well before the Whiskey Rebellion. The rural folks are looked down upon as dumb hicks and rubes and kind of backwards, while the city people are often seen as these effeminate, incompetent, incapable people who lack those true American values.
Yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night.
And I think one thing that the City Nerd noted in his video was this idea that rooted in so much of that is anti-intellectualism.
I'm detecting a distinct strain of anti-intellectualism in this tavern.
Particularly on the behalf of rural folks or people who identify as rural.
The guys at Spectrum think I'm just some dumb hick. They said that to me at a dinner.
And I do think that that's very true, and I do personally believe that anti-intellectualism is exceptionally harmful. I'm also a person who believes that you're never going to combat anti-intellectualism by telling somebody they seem stupid.
And I just want to be clear that if you're someone who identifies as rural, this video isn't me looking down on you. The entire heuristic they use for voting is whatever the smarty pants city people are voting for, I'm voting for the opposite.
Which, if I look at the series of videos that the City Nerd makes about pickup trucks and rural cosplay and the like, I feel like rooted in the core is that premise. And I imagine he can't help it, and it's probably just the way the City Nerd talks, but the dude can sound awful condescending throughout his videos.
Oh, look, another urban cowboy heading to the wilds of the Whole Foods parking lot in his F-250.
I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that. Shit, I thought there was two of you.
To be quite honest, I'm actually a big fan of most of the City Nerd's content. And if you look at the data around some of the videos that the City Nerd puts out relative to pickup trucks and, rural self-identification, these types of videos tend to out-index his other videos. I definitely see an incentive for him to make videos about this topic and engage on this topic. But what I struggle about with so many of those videos is so many of the things that they code as like rural, like are actually not rural. They're actually more directly akin to ideals like toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity.
Which I will be the first to acknowledge is a huge, massive problem and is an overall underlying current to any time that you see like a politician pretending to like go duck hunting, or any person who lives in suburbia and works in an office park but meanwhile drives the biggest pickup truck possible. So much of that is wanting to send the signals and codes of masculinity.
Toxic masculinity.
But the more you make it about being rural versus urban, I think you're kind of missing the core problem and the mark of the issue. And so really, that premise is why I take so much issue with the video I saw. I think it's missing that key element, and it makes the type of automobile you drive another battle in the overall culture war that we're in. Which is probably a good segue to another important thing to think about when you're considering rural communities and essentially urban planning. You know, in the state of Vermont, we have a significant housing crisis going on, much like the rest of the country. Our housing crisis is driven by scarcity, complexity in building, a lack of labor to build, and then the added pressures of a lot of people buying second homes in places like Connecticut or Boston or even New York, and not living there full time, but locking up some housing stock that could be used for some folks who are actually living there and really part of the community. And then the Airbnb-ification has played a big role and big problem in things too. But by far the biggest tension is this idea that most Vermonters, they don't want to live on top of people, and they want that space and they want that sense of living remote. And so laws like Act 250 and NIMBYism have definitely pressured development over the last 30 or 40 years not to happen in Vermont. I'm personally someone who sees this problem and sees actually rural village centers as a place to actually cluster more of that development, you know, rather than focusing on farmland and converting farmland into like 2-acre subdivisions, taking some of the dense rural villages, which were set up 150, 200 years ago because it was actually much more practical for people to live closer together, and actually continuing that thing, because shockingly 150, 200 years later, those same advantages of clustered development exist today when you think about things like wastewater mitigation and electricity distribution and even internet distribution now, like all of those things. It's much easier to do. In fact, even like in our tiny little town of 700 people of Peacham, Vermont, I'm working on a project with some other folks where we're trying to convert an old vacant building in the center of town and turn it into apartments. Yet some of the biggest challenges to those projects have been folks who've not wanting more apartments near them or having biases against people who live in apartments. Fanning the flames of that cultural urban versus rural warfare and some of the perceptions that exist, I don't think it helps any of those negotiations in trying to make those improvements. Now, before I end this video, there is actually one thing I wanted to show you guys, because I think I've got it now and I'm probably gonna keep it as a souvenir. So you see this? This will probably be the last Metro card I ever own. And I've actually had a ridiculous number of these. As a daily commuter, when I moved to New York, I regularly had these to just get around as well, because it was the most efficient, cost-effective, and often fastest way to get around. And it's probably been about like a year and a half since I actually had to come down to New York and hang out for an extended period of time. And one of the things I realized is I don't even need this anymore, and I can actually just like use my cell phone to like, act as like a pass, and like, I don't even have to like buy a card or anything. Like the MTA just like knows how to now like connect it to your credit card number and can even give you unlimited rides, which until I arrived in town yesterday, I wasn't even aware of, just because I don't pay too much attention to that sort of thing anymore. And so right now this card has one ride left on it, and I don't even think I want to use it. I'm probably just going to keep this as a souvenir, which I guess for me really highlights a key thing. The City Nerds video talked so much about people who live in suburban or urban areas but identify as rural. I actually think I might be a person who lives in a rural area, but probably more identifies still as a city person than a rural person, which I don't know. I think if there's maybe more of us out there, or more of us at least talking about being out there, maybe that will start to change some of the things culturally that exist out there and bridge some of those gaps. Or more likely, probably not, and I'm just deluding myself, but I don't know. What can you do? Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go actually up to the Apple store. I actually broke the camera lens on my phone about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but because of where I live, the nearest Apple store was like, I don't know, 3 hours away. Now I have an appointment to get my phone lens fixed, and I gotta go do that before catching the train to head back to the farm. But thanks for watching, everybody. If you're curious about me and what I'm doing here, I'll leave a couple videos that you can check out, and I'll be back again soon with another video too.
Well, I bought me a truck. It's got big shiny wheels, never seen a dirt road, but man, it appeals. Got my plaid shirt on and my boots so fine, but the only thing I'm plowing is a Costco line.